There's a specific kind of silence that comes after industrial baking stops. Not quiet silence. The absence of something that used to fill the air so completely that people organized their mornings around it. I'm standing on Fifth Avenue in Bay Shore, Long Island. It's February 2024. The building behind me is 14 acres of brick and glass that hasn't baked anything in almost 10 years. I'm trying to understand something that doesn't make sense on paper. Ask anyone over 40 who grew up within 50 miles of New York City about Entenmann's, and they won't talk about cake. They'll talk about the smell. Maria Castellano grew up 3 blocks from the Bayshore plant. She tells me the smell would wake her up before her alarm clock did. You could tell what they were making by the time of day. She says, morning was always donuts. Chocolate glaze by 9 a.m. You didn't need a watch. You just needed your nose. The factory ran 24 hours, 3 shifts. The loading docks never stopped humming. Trucks came in before dawn with flour and sugar measured in tons. They left with boxes stacked floor to ceiling white and blue, that distinctive cursive logo. The cellophane window showing exactly what was inside Dodd at peak production in the 1990s. The Bayshore facility employed 1,500 workers. 1,500 in a town of 16,000 people. That's 1 in every 10 residents working the same building, breathing the same sugar-thick air, clocking in at a place that had been there longer than anyone could remember. Joseph Fiorentino started working the line in 1954. 60 years later, when they shut it down, he was still showing up, 76 years old. They gave him an engraved watch when he hit 40 years, a gift from a family that didn't own the company anymore, but whose name was still on the building. I'm going to miss going to work, he told a reporter the day they announced the closure. That's all he said. No anger, no bitterness. Just a man who'd spent 60 years doing something that suddenly didn't exist anymore. That's the thing nobody writes about in business journals. You can't put that on a balance sheet. The way a factory becomes part of how a town breathes. The way 1,500 families organize their lives around shift changes and overtime schedules. The way kids grow up knowing exactly what their parents are making by the smell that drifts through their bedroom windows at 6 a.m. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Let me take you back to where this actually starts. Not in Bayshore, in Brooklyn, with a German kid who couldn't speak English and a horse that knew the delivery routes better than he did. 1898 Brooklyn. William Entenmann steps off a boat from Stuttgart with calloused hands and a thick German accent. He's 19 years old. He's learned baking the old way from his father. In a shop where everything was done by hand, where recipes lived in memory, where the difference between good bread and bad bread was something you felt in your fingers, not something you read in a manual. He works in other people's bakeries first, watching, learning how the American system works, where the margins are, how distribution happens, who buys what and when, and he notices something nobody else seems to be paying attention to. Brooklyn. Families, especially the wealthy ones, want fresh bread delivered to their doors. Not yesterday's bread from the corner shop. Fresh, morning baked, still warm when it arrives. So, William Entenmann buys a horse and a wagon. And every morning before sunrise, he loads that wagon with bread he baked in a tiny shop on Rogers Avenue in Flatbush. And he drives that horse through neighborhood streets, knocking on doors, handing warm loaves directly to housewives who didn't even know they wanted this service until he showed up offering it. This is 1898. There are no refrigerated trucks, no logistics software, no supply chain management. Just a German kid with a horse who figured out that delivery was the product, not just the bread. The wealthy families notice. The Morgans, the Vanderbilts. Those names, the ones you read about in Gilded Age history books, start getting Entenmann's bread delivered to their estates on Long Island. Not because the bread is particularly revolutionary, because the service is, because nobody else is doing it, because William Entenmann understands something fundamental. People will pay for reliability. Then his son gets sick. William Jr., the kid who'll eventually take over contracts. Rheumatic fever. The family doctor gives them clear instructions. Get him out of Brooklyn. The city air is killing him. Move east. Find clean country air. So the family packs up the bakery and moves 40 miles to Bayshore. It's 1920. Bay Shore is farmland. Small coastal town. Nothing there except fishing boats and potato fields. The decision saves the kid's life. But more importantly, and this is the part nobody could have predicted in 1920, it anchors the entire Entenmann story to a single address. One building, one street, one factory that will stand for the next 116 years. The horse-drawn wagon was just the beginning. What comes next is where the empire actually gets built. William Entenmann Jr. drops dead of a heart attack. He's in his 50s. Leaves behind a wife, Martha, and 3 sons, Charles, Robert, and William III. The business at this point is solid. 30 home delivery routes across Long Island. Reputation for quality that's been building for 50 years. But it's still local, still small, still fundamentally the same model William Sr. started with in 1898. Bake it, load a truck, knock on doors. Martha Entenmann does not cry, does not sell, does not step back. She steps forward. Because Martha sees something in 1951 that most bakery owners are still refusing to acknowledge. The home delivery model is dying. Not because it's bad, because supermarkets are replacing it. The American grocery landscape is changing so fast that family bakeries can't keep up. Chain supermarkets, and Safeway are exploding across the country. They're buying in bulk, negotiating prices that small bakeries can't match, offering one-stop shopping that makes home delivery feel old-fashioned. Most family bakeries fight this change. They cling to tradition. They insist their customers will stay loyal to the delivery man they've known for 20 years. Martha Entenmann makes a different calculation. She decides to kill the business model that built the company. First move, stop making bread entirely. Bread is a commodity. People buy it every day. It's necessary, which means it's price sensitive, which means supermarkets will crush you on margins. You can't win competing on bread. Cakes and pastries, though, those aren't necessities. They're treats, special occasions. The thing you bring to a gathering. The box you show up with when you visit someone's house. That's a brand product. That's something people will pay for because of the name. So, Entenmann stops baking bread, the thing they've made since 1898, and goes all in on cakes. Second move. Abandon home delivery and go direct to supermarkets. This is radical. The entire business has been built on a personal relationship between the delivery driver and the customer. You trust the man who brings bread to your door. That's the whole model. Martha says, we're replacing that relationship with packaging. And here's where she invents something that changes food retail forever. The problem Martha is trying to solve seems simple but is actually profound. How do you make someone buy a cake they've never tasted? In the old delivery model, trust did the work. The delivery driver knew your name. You'd been buying from him for years. You bought the cake because you trusted him. In a supermarket, there's no delivery driver. There's just an aisle with 100 white boxes all trying to look the same. So Martha and her sons develop something in 1959 that sounds so obvious in retrospect that it's shocking nobody thought of it earlier. They cut a cellophane window into the top of the Entenmann's box. That's it. A transparent window. You can look down and see the actual cake. See the chocolate glaze. See the crumb topping. See the product before you buy it. The effect is immediate. Sales explode. Other bakeries start copying the concept within 2 years. Today, the see-through window is so universal that most people have no idea Entenmann's invented it. But here's what makes it genius. Martha isn't just solving a packaging problem. She's creating a retail geography. Supermarkets start putting Entenmann's products on end-of-aisle displays. Prime real estate. Eye level. The white and blue box with the window becomes something people navigate toward. You're walking through the store, you turn a corner, and there's the Entenmann's display. And you stop. Not because you plan to, because the see-through window makes the decision for you. By 1961, demand has grown so fast that the family builds the largest commercial bakery in the United States at that time. 5 acres on 5th Avenue in Bayshore. Automated mixing systems. Computer-controlled ingredient delivery technology that most bakeries won't adopt for another decade. Charles Entenmann, the oldest son, designs the entire operation. He's a Korean War vet who never went to college, but somehow taught himself engineering. His son will later say, nobody knew how he got so smart. He never went to school, but he never forgot anything he read. Charles sees automation not as a cost-cutting measure, but as a quality measure. Human hands can't measure ingredients with the precision a machine can. Consistency at scale requires technology. You can't compete on quality if every batch tastes slightly different. The factory runs 24 hours. 3 shifts. By 1975, New Yorkers alone are buying 1.25 million Entenmann's cakes per week. That's not a bakery. That's a cultural institution. And here's the detail that tells you everything about where Entenmann sits in American culture by the mid-1970s. Wealthy. Manhattan hosts are serving Entenmann's products at dinner parties and quietly throwing away the boxes before guests arrive. A 1979 article in New York Magazine documents this phenomenon. The sophisticated host's secret: serve the best mass-market cake available. Pretend it's homemade. Hope nobody notices. The fact that the box is recognizable enough to need hiding? That's the definition of cultural power. Frank Sinatra has a standing weekly order. Every Thursday, a crumb coffee cake is delivered to him personally. This goes on for years. By any measure, Entenmann's has reached the peak. National distribution. Brand loyalty that crosses every class boundary. A factory running at capacity. A family business that did everything right. And that's exactly when the family decides to sell. The Entenmann family takes the company public. The official reason: tax planning. When you're running a business generating hundreds of millions in revenue, the tax implications of staying private get complicated. Going public makes sense, but the family is careful. They retain 80% of the shares. control stays with them. The stock certificates carry an image of Martha Entenmann, the woman who invented the see-through box, negotiated the supermarket deals, held the family together after William Jr. died. 2 years later, in 1978, they sell the entire company. The buyer, Warner Lambert, a pharmaceutical company best known for Listerine and Chiclets gum. The price, $233 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $1 billion in today's money. Charles retires immediately. His brothers follow. The family collects their money. And a baking dynasty that William Entenmann started with a horse-drawn wagon in 1898 passes out of family hands after 80 years. Nobody at the time sees this as a tragedy. It looks like success. The American dream fully realized. Immigrant family builds empire, sells for generational wealth, retires to Florida. But here's what nobody's paying attention to in 1978. The moment a family business becomes a portfolio asset, something fundamental changes. Not immediately, not obviously, but irreversibly. Warner Lambert doesn't know how to run a bakery. They're a pharmaceutical company. They know chemistry. They know drug distribution. They don't know why the smell of fresh donuts matters to a town. Like Bayshore, they don't know why 1,500 families organizing their lives around factory shifts creates a kind of economic stability that no spreadsheet can measure. What they do know is quarterly earnings, return on investment, cost per unit, and under that logic, what happens next is inevitable. Late 1970s, a rumor starts circulating in Westchester County, New York. The rumor says that Entenmann's profits are being funneled to Reverend Sun Myung Moon's Unification Church. It's completely false. The Unification Church itself will later publicly deny any connection. But false rumors don't need truth to survive once they're airborne. The rumor spreads like fire. Nuns are reportedly warning schoolchildren not to let their parents buy Entenmann's products. Delivery drivers are getting harassed on their routes. Churches in Rhode Island are organizing formal boycotts. Sales in the Northeast, Entenmann's home territory. Their strongest markets start to flatten. Warner Lambert initially assumes the rumor will die on its own. It doesn't. By 1979, the company is forced into full crisis mode. They distribute 10,000 letters to clergy members across the country. They take out newspaper ads. They hold a press conference in Boston specifically to address the rumor. Eventually, it works. The correction spreads. Customers start apologizing to delivery drivers. Some confess they were among those who spread the rumor. But the damage is done. Not just to sales, to the relationship between the company and the brand. Because here's what the rumor exposes. Warner Lambert doesn't know how to protect Entenmann's. They're a pharmaceutical company managing a bakery through a crisis that requires local knowledge. The kind of knowledge that only comes from being embedded in the community for 80 years. The Entenmann family would have known how to respond. Because the brand was personal to them. Because Bayshore was home. To Warner Lambert, it's a profitable division. And when that division's profits start slipping, they make the rational corporate decision. They sell. General Foods buys Entenmann's for $315 million. $82 million more than Warner Lambert paid just 4 years earlier. The brand has barely stabilized, and it's already changing hands again. Under General Foods, and then under Kraft after the 1990 merger, Entenmann's enters what looks on paper like its most dominant period. The Bayshore facility expands to 14 acres. Employment peaks at 1,500 workers. The factory runs 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then something extraordinary happens in American food culture. The fat-free craze. Late 1980s, early 1990s. America becomes obsessed with eliminating fat from diet. It's everywhere. Low fat, no fat, fat-free. The words are magic. People genuinely believe, that if you just remove the fat, you can eat as much as you want and stay healthy. Entenmann sees this coming early. In 1989, they launch a fat-free product line. 12 items initially. It explodes. By 1994. The fat-free line has grown to 70 distinct products and generates over $250 million. Annually, 1/3 of Entenmann's total revenue. The fat-free coffee cake. The fat-free chocolate cupcake. The fat-free donut. People are buying these products by the case. And Entenmann's has every advantage. Brand recognition, supermarket relationships, automated production at scale. They're perfectly positioned to dominate a trend that will define American grocery aisles for a decade. Total Entenmann's revenues hit $750 million during this period. General Foods Bakery Companies. The parent entity becomes a $1.5 billion business with Entenmann's as its crown jewel. The problem is that General Foods becomes Kraft, and Kraft decides in 1995 that baking isn't its core business. So they sell. Again. CPC International buys Entenmann's for $865 million. The brand is worth more every time it's sold. But none of that money goes back to Bayshore. None of it improves the factory. None of it increases wages. The transactions are happening in boardrooms in New Jersey and Philadelphia. The decisions are being made by people who've never walked the floor in Bay Shore, who've never smelled the chocolate glaze at 9M, who've never met Joseph Fiorentino. And this is where the story starts, accelerating toward the ending nobody in Bayshore sees coming. Let me walk you through what happens between 1995 and 2009. It's dizzying. 1995. CPC International buys Entenmann's. CPC International becomes Best Foods. 2000. Unilever, the Anglo-Dutch giant, buys Best Foods for $24.3 billion. 2001. Unilever decides baking doesn't fit their strategy. They sell the baking division to George Weston Limited, a Canadian company, for $1.77 billion. George Weston owns Entenmann's for 7 years. Then, in 2008, the largest transaction in this entire chain happens. Grupo Bimbo, already the world's largest baking company by production volume, headquartered in Mexico City, negotiates the acquisition of Weston Foods, U.S. for $2.38 billion. The deal closes on January 21st, 2009. With that transaction, Entenmann's, the brand William Entenmann, started with a horse-drawn wagon in Brooklyn in 1898, becomes a product in the portfolio of a Mexican multinational corporation. For a grocery shopper, nothing changes. The Entenmann's box still looks the same. White and blue. The cursive logo. The see-through window. But the people making decisions about where to bake the product, how much to invest in Bayshore, which plants to consolidate and which to close, those people are now in Horsham, Pennsylvania, answering to Mexico City. And here's what Grupo Bimbo sees when they look at Bayshore. A 14-acre factory in one of the most expensive operating environments in the United States. High electricity costs, high property taxes, high fuel costs, high labor costs. Meanwhile, they operate 60 other bakeries across America, many of them in Pennsylvania and Ohio, where costs are a fraction of what they are on Long Island. The arithmetic is brutal and simple. On March 27, 2014, Bimbo Bakeries USA announces that baking operations at Bayshore will cease. Production stops on August 13, 2014. 176 workers are laid off. The remaining employees are transferred to research and marketing positions. The ovens go cold. August 13, 2014. The last batch of Entenmann's products rolls off the Bayshore line. Chocolate chip cookies. The same recipe introduced in 1972. Unchanged. By the end of the day, the ovens are off. The mixers stop. The conveyor belts halt. And within a week, the smell is gone. Maria Castellano, who grew up 3 blocks away, tells me it was the strangest thing. You don't realize how much you depend on something until it's not there anymore, she says. For a week after they shut down, I kept waking up at 6 a.m. expecting to smell donuts. And there was just nothing. Joseph Fiorentino, 76 years old, works his last shift. 60 years. 3 generations of Entenmann ownership, the family. Warner Lambert, General Foods, Kraft, CPC. Best Foods, Unilever, George Weston, Grupo Bimbo. He outlasted them all. He tells a reporter he's going to miss going to work. That's all he says. Suzanne Anker, 56, another longtime employee, tells Newsday. Most people would say they were all grateful to have that job because it was a good-paying job and people were well provided for. Past tense. The factory doesn't disappear. The building is still there. 14 acres of brick and glass on 5th Avenue. But it's silent now. The loading docks are empty. The parking lot that once held the cars of 1,500 workers is quiet. And the thing nobody can calculate, the thing that doesn't appear on any corporate balance sheet, is the value of a neighborhood. Waking up every morning to the smell of something being made. Let me tell you what gets lost when a place like Bayshore loses a factory like Entenmann's. Not the jobs. Yes, that's devastating. But I'm talking about something deeper. There's a specific economic ecosystem that forms around a factory that's been in one place for a century. It's not just the 1,500 people working the line. It's the diners that open early to feed the morning shift. The gas stations that stay open late for the night workers. The daycare centers that adjust their hours to match factory schedules. The local banks that understand manufacturing payroll cycles. The suppliers who've been delivering to that same address for decades. When the factory closes, all of that begins to unravel. Not immediately, but gradually. Like pulling a thread. The diners close. The gas stations cut hours. The daycare centers lose clients. The suppliers find new routes. And the town begins to reorganize itself around the absence of the thing that used to define it. That there's something else that dies too. Something harder to measure. It's the knowledge that the place where you live makes something. That your neighbors produce a physical product that people across the country recognize. That the boxes in grocery stores from California to Maine were filled by people you might see at the grocery store on Saturday. There's dignity in that. Purpose. A kind of collective identity that no service economy job can replace. When the Entenmann's factory was running, Bayshore wasn't just a bedroom community for New York City commuters. It was a town that produced. That made something the rest of America wanted. That identity doesn't transfer to an office park in Pennsylvania. Here's what people get wrong about this story. Entenmann's didn't fail. That's the strangest part. The brand is still successful. The products still sell. The white and blue boxes are still on supermarket shelves from coast to coast. Bimbo Bakeries USA operates 60 facilities, employs 20,000 workers, runs 11,000 distribution routes. The chocolate chip cookies are still made from the same recipe introduced in 1972. The all-butter loaf cake hasn't fundamentally changed since 1898. 700 million of them sold. $700 million. The quality, by most consumer accounts, is maintained. The kosher certification survived the ownership changes. The see-through window is still there. Martha Entenmann's invention. Still functioning exactly as she intended in 1959. But here's what's gone. The connection between the product and the place. For 116 years, Entenmann's had an address. 5th Avenue, Bayshore, Long Island. That address meant something. It meant Joseph Fiorentino showing up for 60 years. It meant Maria Castellano waking up to the smell of donuts. It meant Frank Sinatra calling Long Island directly because the product and the place were the same thing. That's gone now. The product is the same. But the story is gone. And in a world where brands try desperately to create artificial authenticity, farm to table, artisanal, small batch, handcrafted Entenmann's had the real thing and traded it for efficiency. Charles Entenmann died in 2022, 92 years old. Peacefully in Florida, surrounded by his children. His son revealed something that Charles kept secret most of his life. He never ate Entenmann's cake. He just wasn't a dessert guy. His son told a reporter, the man who designed the automated ingredient delivery systems, who argued for quality as the only sustainable competitive advantage, who built the machine that bakes 700 million loaf cakes, never tasted them. He was a builder. What he built was for other people. Bimbo Bakeries issued a statement upon his death. Charles was instrumental in turning the Entenmann's brand into a household name. And we will continue to build on the mission and legacy his family established more than 120 years ago. It's a corporate statement, careful and accurate, and bloodless. I started this investigation trying to understand how a family bakery becomes a Mexican conglomerate's portfolio asset. What I found is something more uncomfortable. This isn't a story about failure. It's a story about success that becomes so complete it consumes the thing that made it. Successful in the first place, the Entenmann family made every rational decision. They expanded to supermarkets when home delivery was dying. They automated when quality demanded it. They sold when the offers became too large to refuse. Warner Lambert, General Foods, Kraft, CPC, Best Foods, Unilever, George Weston, Grupo Bimbo. None of them were villains. They ran competent businesses. They maintained quality. They employed thousands. They made rational decisions based on operational efficiency. And yet, something died. Here's what I think happened. First, family. Identity is the hardest thing to sell and the easiest thing to lose. When William Jr. died in 1951, the family rebuilt. Martha invented new packaging. Charles automated production. They conquered the supermarket. But when they sold in 1978, what left with them was irreplaceable. The institutional knowledge that Bayshore wasn't just a facility. It was a reason. No corporate owner, however competent, can buy that back. Second, scale without roots becomes pure arithmetic. The Bayshore closure wasn't a villain's decision. It was the inevitable outcome of a system that values optimization above geography, efficiency above memory, unit cost above everything the name once meant. Bimbo Bakeries US made a rational decision. Rationality is not the same as rightness. Third, a brand is not a logo. It's an accumulation of lived experience. For 116 years, Entenmann's had a specific address. That address mattered to Joseph Fiorentino, who worked there for 60 years. It mattered to families who could navigate to the factory by smell alone. It mattered to Frank Sinatra, who called Long Island, directly because the product and the place were the same thing. When you sever that connection, when you relocate production to wherever the spreadsheet says it's cheapest, you still have the brand. But you've lost the thing that made the brand mean something. I'm standing on 5th Avenue again. It's cold. February 22-4. The building behind me is still there. 14 acres. The parking lot where 1,500 workers once parked is mostly empty. There's a chain-link fence, some realtor signs, proposals for redevelopment that never quite materialize, and the smell, that specific, indelible smell of sugar and butter and fresh chocolate that defined this neighborhood for a century, is gone. Completely gone. You can still buy Entenmann's products. The outlet store relocated to Carl Place. People still drive there. The boxes are still on supermarket shelves. The brand survives, but when you open that box, when you eat that chocolate chip cookie made from the same 1972 recipe, there's something missing that you can't quite name, Dodd. It's the knowledge that 1,500 people you might know made this, that the town you live in produced this, that the smell drifting through your window at 6 a.m. was this, being made right now, 3 blocks away. That's what died on August 13th, 2014. Not the brand, not the recipe, not the business, not the connection between a product and the people who made it. The knowledge that your town made something that mattered. That's what gets lost when a family sells to a conglomerate. When a conglomerate optimizes for efficiency. When efficiency demands closing the factory that's been there for 116 years. The ovens are cold. The smell is gone. The boxes are still on the shelf. That's the whole story. And it's not a story about business failure. It's about what we lose when business succeeds too completely. When everything becomes a transaction. When the last connection between a product and the place that made it finally, quietly, disappears. The smell is gone. But the absence remains, Dot. And if you stand on Fifth Avenue on a quiet morning, if you know what used to be here, you can almost feel it. That specific silence that comes after something that used to matter stops. If you found this story meaningful, please hit that like button and subscribe. There are hundreds of stories like this across America, factories that closed, brands that moved, connections that severed. And somebody needs to remember why that matters. Next time you pick up that white and blue box with the see-through window, remember, someone invented that window. Someone built the machines. Someone showed up for 60 years. And somebody decided the spreadsheet mattered more than all of it. That's the story they don't teach in business school. But it's the one that actually matters.